Welcome to Diverse Talks. This is our 9th edition of Diverse Talks, and we are absolutely overwhelmed by our guest today, who is Jason Anker MBE. This is our 9th edition, and Jason's joining us all the way from UK. And today we're going to be talking about safety and expertise and reality. So, Jason, over to you. Thank you very much for joining us. And just say a few words before we start our first question to you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on our Diverse Talks. I'm really, really excited to what we're discussing today.
Great. And as I said, we're overwhelmed to have you here today. I know you're such a significant player in the safety industry. I think we met maybe 10 years ago. Maybe 11 years ago. So it's really pleased to connect with you again today on Diverse Talks.
Thank you for joining us, Jason. So as you know, many of our networks and our connections, our subscribers may not have heard of you and the accident that you've had. So who is Jason Anker? And from your childhood dreams, your life-changing events, please share your story with us.
I had a very, very typical childhood. In fact, my life was just very, very ordinary until January 3rd, 1993, when I was just aged 24 years old. And unfortunately, I fell from a ladder on a construction site. All the typical reasons: the rush job, the unplanned work, trying as a contractor, trying to please a client. So I climbed an unsupported ladder. I fell. Straight away, I knew it was serious because I could not feel my legs. So if you can imagine, 24 years old, you're laid on the floor, looking up at the people above you, all panicking. Ambulances are called. I was rushed to the local hospital. Initially, I was given the prognosis that I was suffering from a condition called spinal shock, and everything was going to be okay. You know, it might take a couple of hours to get the feelings back, a couple of weeks, even a couple of months. But, you know, the outlook was really, really good. But then if you can imagine being sent for a CT scan for a close look, just to make sure, going back into the room, and then the doctor walking in, he wasn't smiling, which he'd done previously. So straight away thinking, this is serious. And he basically came to the side of the bed, told me they discovered significant spine injuries. And then very bluntly and very coldly, he just said to me, you'll never walk again. You'll be paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of your life.
And how old were you then, Jason?
I was just 24. 24 years old. I was married, a young marriage. I had 2 young children. So all the thoughts going through your head at the time about your future. But I suppose still in a place where I didn't quite believe what I was being told, because these things always happen to other people. So, you know, still a bit of doubt there. I was transferred. I had some spinal surgery. 2 metal rods were inserted into my back. And I was then transferred to a spinal rehabilitation hospital. And I was told I'd probably there for about 6 months. If I'm honest, I still really thought that I'd been sent there to learn how to walk, you know, like it is in the movies. But I wasn't. It was all about learning all the skills and all the things that you need to do to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair. I was totally, you know, still in a place of thinking this can't be happening to me. You know, it happens to other people. I was on bed rest for 3 weeks, and you laid literally flat on your back. All your bodily functions are carried out by the nursing staff on the bed. But after about 3 weeks, you get out of bed for the very first time into a wheelchair. You know, initially you can only spend half an hour sat up. Eventually over the week they build it up so you can spend all day long in a wheelchair. And then it basically is the cold reality of learning things that you know, dreams you were doing, you know, being told you was doubly incontinent and all the things that get associated with that. being told you probably won't have any more children, you know, all these things that when you're 24, you know, your marriage, all the dreams of your future being taken away from you. And I had a very, very tough time in the rehab. I realised my marriage was having some problems, you know, the enormity of, you know, being told you spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair, all the worries about being released from hospital, going back into the big wide world. And I don't actually got released on April the 25th, 1993, just over 4.5 months in hospital. And my marriage broke down after one day.
One day.
If you can imagine, one day, she walked out with the children. You know, at the time, it was absolutely soul destroying. I lost my legs, you know, the use of my legs. I lost my dignity, being incontinent at 24, and now I lost my young marriage. It was just so hard for me to take. You know, it was just one thing. It's at the time, it just seemed to be one thing after the other.
I'm just shivering myself just listening to that story. You know, I'm going all tingly. The thought of that, what you went through, and go back a bit. What height did you actually fall from?
Yeah, it was 10 feet, 3 meters. I mean, I normally mention this. I'm sorry if I'm not mentioning it at the start. I normally mention this at the end of the presentations because it's a natural reaction to believe that I fell a long way. So when I share my story of all the hardship, and when you say it was only 3 meters, you fell 3 meters. So it really shows the impact of falls and heights. It doesn't always have to be a huge height to cause, you know, devastating injuries or even death.
And 3 meters and a 5-second decision, basically, was it? Or was it was that the way you normally worked in those days?
We have to appreciate it was 28 years ago. Things were very, very different. But truthfully, a lot of the day of the accident has been pieced together by other people's accounts. I can remember very little, actually. But what I can vividly remember is being stood at the bottom of a ladder. You know, my boss had gone up the ladder previously before me. I stopped. I gave myself those 5 seconds where I thought, hang on, this doesn't feel right. The ground conditions that day were horrendous. It was icy. It was really, really cold. The ladder wasn't supported, wasn't tied on or anything. And, you know, I gave myself those 5 seconds where I thought, this is not safe. But unfortunately, I did not have the courage to speak up. You know, in that moment, if you know, I didn't, you know, for a variety of reasons, you know, work pressure, you know, these guys were more experienced than I was, you know, my mindset at the time of my accident, the place I was in, I just thought, just do it, just get it done. Because at the end of the day, it always happens to other people. So, you know, I unfortunately took the gamble that day, and, you know, I live today with the consequences of that one decision.
Yeah. So you came out of hospital. One day later, another part of your life fell apart, basically, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was like everything was going wrong. I couldn't really see a future for myself. You know, it was a really, really dark time. I was having counselling at the time to try and help me through it. I was really, really struggling. I ashamedly didn't speak up about how I was feeling. I just tried to deal with everything myself. So, you know, a reliance on alcohol. I was drinking really heavily at the time. I was taking antidepressants prescribed by a doctor, but obviously I was abusing how much I was taking because I was in such a low, low place. But we've got to remember, I had 2 young children. My daughter Abby was 3 at the time. So I was trying to function so I could, you know, when I did see my children, I could try and be a father, but it was so difficult for me, not speaking up. And unfortunately, I turned to illegal drugs as well. And it wasn't something I'd ever done before in my life. It wasn't something I was proud of doing. It was like I didn't know how to cope, and I just found a way of getting through every day. And that's all it seemed, just get through another day. Unfortunately, 2 years after my accident, I suffered an unintentional drugs overdose, a reaction to the illegal drugs I was taking. Put me in a coma on life support machine for 17 days. In fact, my mum and dad was told after day 15 to turn the machine off. You know, the medical profession said, look, we've done everything we can. He's not responding. We suspect he's got serious brain damage. So our advice is turn the machine off. So if you can try and imagine that my mum and dad had the initial trauma of my original accident, and then watch their son's life disintegrate in front of their eyes for 2 years, on their face with the decision of basically turning the machine off and watching their son die.
Yeah. Are you the only child in the family as well, Jason?
I'm not. I've got a brother and a sister. I'm the youngest. I've got an older sister and an older brother. So again, you know, I talk about my accident and the impact on my life, but I think what really resonates with my story is the impact on your family and friends as well.
Yeah. So what changed? How do you snap out of it, or what made you be who you are today?
Believe it or not, it took about 16 years of me really struggling. Like I said, I can't also, I found a way of coping. I brought my children up by myself, so I had a focus. 16 years ago, a chance meeting with a guy called Dan Terry, who saw me in a wheelchair and just asked me, you know, what's your story? Why are you in a wheelchair? Once I told him my story, he suggested that I need to come out to industry and share the story. And again, probably what I'm going to be a habit. I don't really go into a lot of details about the accident. I tell people what I did because the impact is talk about the impact on your life after the accident. Talk about the impact on your family. Talk about the impact on your friends. And this is what has led me to a place where I am today, where we focus on the impact of making bad choices.
Well, that's what we've covered now in this first part of our diverse talk with Jason Anker, is the tremendous impact of that very short decision from a fall from 3 meters. So this diverse talk is about safety and about how he will then turn that into a massive positive. So join us next for our part 2 talk with Jason Anker, and he's going to share with us how he's managed to turn that tragedy, that going through the drugs, the alcohol, the depression, into what Jason Anker is today. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in part 2 of this talk.
Thank you.